do is, and again, we're just watching me do this. You can take a nap if you want. No, don't do that. I'm just kidding. Please do not take a nap, unless you really need to. I'm going to go to Pexels, and I'm going to find an image. Whoop, not that. Something that has multiple points of interest, which will really help this effect. Hey, that looks good. All right, cool. So in Illustrator, I'm going to create a new wide format web layout, and I'm going to work with my ellipse tool. I'm going to create 2 of these perfectly round, and I can nail the round, definitely not by hand, because unless I'm paying attention to the width and the height, it's still possibly going to be not perfectly round. So what we do is hold down the Shift key as we click and drag, and that creates a perfectly round ellipse. Same is true for a rectangle. Without holding down the Shift key, which is called a modifier key, we get a rectangle, but if we hold down that modifier Shift key, we get a square. And if we hold down Shift and Alt, holding down Shift will create from where we click and in the direction of where we drag. But if you hold down Shift and Alt, it will create from the center and out. Just a little FYI for you. Okay. Shift and Option on the Mac. Thank you. So I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'll make an exact copy of that. All right. And I'm going to reverse the fill and stroke on that. So this little icon right here, the little double arrowhead, when I click that, it will swap the color for stroke and fill. So we'll get, oh, you have to select it first. So now it has a black fill and a white stroke. I hit the X key to bring my stroke selector forward, and then the / key, which is the one underneath the question mark, and that removes the stroke from that. And I'll do the same on this one here. Flip-flop those, and then remove the stroke. Groovy. All right. Going to Window and selecting Appearance brings up the Appearance panel. The Appearance panel allows us to add things to the appearance of our shapes in Illustrator. I believe InDesign has one. It's not as robust as the Illustrator one, but it's a non-destructive effect, very similar to layer styles in Photoshop, but this interacts with the actual shape. And so if we apply like a particular stroke and then we change our shape, that application is dynamically adjusted based on your shape that has that applied to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to apply an effect onto this first circle. So I'm going to click on the FX to add a new effect. I'm going to go to Path and Offset Path. And I'm going to give myself a 2-inch path. Massive. The joins I'm going to set to round. This is very important, and you'll see later on why. Click OK, and then I'm going to do the same thing to this guy, add a new effect. And I'm going to add an offset path effect, which means it's going to add a path to this as an effect, not as a stroke attribute, if that makes sense. Set this to round. Cool. All right, now I'm going to counteract that. offset path. I'm going to apply a new effect. I'm going to go -2 inches round. I think I've already done something out of order, but that's okay. -2 inches. Yeah, I messed that one up. All right, go back. Okay. And then I'm going to drag select both of these shapes. I'm going to go to Object and make a compound path. And once I do that, we get this kind of interesting little connection. And it lives and breathes as we move these around. So, if I wanted to, I can make these bigger. Let's look at my image real quick. So to actually be safer, I'm going to bring in that image into my Illustrator to use as a reference. Now, in order to edit this shape, right now it's a compound path, which means that even though these two paths aren't touching, as far as Illustrator is concerned, they are part of the same path. When you work with a letter that has what's called a knockout in it, so that letter O, lowercase e, these both have what's called a knockout. If I convert these to paths, ungroup them, and then release the compound path, that little guy creates the knockout by being a compound path. So because there's an overlap here, when I make this a compound path, that little center part gets knocked out. The same with the O. So that's what a compound path does. Again, it's a math calculation that interpolates what is supposed to be knocked out and what's supposed to be joined. And so because we have an exaggerated stroke and unstroke, we have this weird, like, blobby connection. Now, in order to change this position of these blobs, I have to edit this object. And the easiest way to do that, and many of you have run into this before, is if you accidentally double click on a path, it goes into this weird edit mode and everything else gets kind of faded back. And usually when you go into this mode, if I see you've done that, I'm just like, okay, go back, hit that back arrow and get out of that, because that's dangerous. But we actually want to do this on purpose. So we're going to double click on this. And if we want to move one of these circles, we have to click on the little dot in the center, and that allows us to move it around. Also, we can resize our circle that way as well by holding down the Shift key. But we have to first click on that little center point and then click and drag to place it where we want to, let's say, highlight something. And because we're inside of this compound path, if we add a new shape, it automatically becomes part of that compound path. And because of the offset that we've created, that giant 2-inch offset and minus offset, it joins and creates this like blobby shape. So I'm going to go back out now. I'm going to ditch this image here. And this is, I set to 50% opacity so we could see through it into the image.
When you add a shape, you have to do that in the isolation mode?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, any other option, you'll have to undo the compound path. You can try remaking the compound path, but sometimes compound path with a compound path has unpredictable results. So going into the shape, and that's just something I've recently learned actually. I've always been afraid to go into that thing. I've always done it old school, but it actually is a lot easier. So for those of you that are in Illustrator, feel free to play with that. Okay, anyway, I've created a path. I'm going to select it. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to jump over to InDesign, make a new document, and I'm going to drop that, or so I'm going to paste my shape in. So Command V, let's make this a little bigger. And then with the shape selected, File, Place, and I'm going to place that image. Let's scale it down, and then if I click on that target, Shift Alt or Shift Option, and then I can scale up. Try and get these objects or these points of interest into the center of where I want them to be. Okay. I think I pasted it twice. So that is how we create a unique mask for an image using Illustrator, and using kind of a non-standard way of doing it in Illustrator. We could have created a hand-drawn path and manipulated the points and the paths and the handles to kind of recreate this, but having Illustrator calculate all the weird blobby parts is super handy. Now, let's talk about text wrap. So I'm going to just rotate this around here like that, and I'm going to create a text area right along here, and then I'm going to fill it with placeholder text. And that's a really long text line, even at 12 point. I'm going to bump it up to 14, and we're going to create a column environment inside of the text area. Up until this point, we've been creating columns through the layout, margins and columns. We're going to actually create it inside of this text area. We're gonna go a little organic on this. So to add columns to a text area, you right click on the text area and choose text frame options. And then in here, we can choose 2 columns. Let's preview that. And I want my gutter to be a little more significant. Okay, cool. Now, right now, the text is just flowing right over that shape. And what we want to do is we want to tell the text area to not touch our shape. We want to give it some guidance. So we select this shape. I just had a brain fart. It's called text wrap. There it is. All right, object text wrap. That's right, because we are on object. Where did it go? I lost it already. Object text wrap. No, window text wrap. Hello. There it is. dialog box. I want to make sure the text wrap is applied to the shape. And so I clicked this one here, wrap around object shape. And that totally did not work. Why did that not work? Oh, that's right. So wrap to bounding, same as clipping. There we go. There it is. And then we can bump up the offset so we can make sure that the text isn't actually touching our shape. And there we go. That's how we do text wrap.